Welcome to the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast, where you get straightforward, no-nonsense ideas on leadership and growth, both personally and professionally. It's brought to you by the Chief Coaching Officer of the Peak Performance Group. He's also a brilliant and successful serial entrepreneur. He's a two-time author. He's a certified executive coach. He's a sales genius. He's bald.
Hey now.
And he's your host of the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast. Buckle your chin strap. Here's your host, Coach Rick Colster.
Hey, welcome to the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Rick. As you all know, we are all about telling the truth. That's right. Remember, subscribe and like down below. We're on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, YouTube video. Make sure you subscribe so you get every single episode, folks. We want to make sure you're there. And you know what? It's time for the Bald Truth. Thanks for tuning in and turning on. We appreciate you listening to it, and we appreciate the likes and all the subscribers to the Bald Truth. Today is going to be a fun day. You know, every day peak performers strive to get better and better at their craft. Leaders work to become better leaders for their teams and for their companies. The future of every company, I believe, is really directly tied to the leadership of the organization and the impact it has on employees, customers, or clients, whatever you call them. They say that a positive can-do leadership attitude is a good thing. And I got to agree with that. And I'm actually probably an understatement, to be the truth. Studies have shown that when the workplace environment is positive and it can do, productivity and morale are at the highest levels. Today, our guest is an expert in positive workplace experience. In fact, he likes to remind people that when he helps others, it's his pleasure to help them. With years of work in the corporate and nonprofit world, he's become known as a master of the can-do. He's worked as an organizational effectiveness leader for one of our favorite places to eat. Well, I got to say it, Chick-Fil-A. He spent years helping creating that leadership mindset and the my pleasure mantra that we all know and love. I got to tell you today, welcome to the Bald Truth, the Swaz, Scott Wozniak. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Rick. Man, it's fun hanging out with you here. We've known each other for a while, but it took me several years before I could join you in the right haircut and qualify for the Bald podcast here.
It's just time. It takes time.
That's right.
And yeah, I think last time we actually ran into each other, you actually had hair. So
yeah, it's true. It's true. I've matured now, gone to the next stage here.
Well, you know what they say: God only made a few perfect heads. The rest he gave hair.
That's right. He covered the other ones up. That's right.
That's right. Absolutely. So I appreciate you coming on today. You know, your background and expertise in organizational leadership really is, I mean, you've got a master's degree, you've got years of experience with, Fortune 5,000, Fortune 500 companies. And as you continue to do now that with Swaz Consulting, that you continue to help develop those leaders for the future. And that's really what it is. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because, of course, it's the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast, all about leadership. And some of the things I really want to touch on, we'll talk about today, is your philosophy on leadership. But let's start with a little background. How about that? We'll start with a little background. How did you get started? And how do you really mold into this organizational development space that we're both in?
Yeah, it actually started with bad leadership. So I was a nonprofit leader doing some pretty cool stuff, traveling around the country, filling stadiums for events, running leadership development programs, working with kids in the inner city. I mean, I had a wide variety. And honestly, I worked for some really nice guys with a great heart and a big vision who were terrible leaders. And there's not bad humans, right? It wasn't like bad person, so they showed up as a crank in the office. Good-hearted, outside of work, I enjoyed them. when we were running the company, it's like, what in the world is going on? And I was talking to a mentor about it. And I honestly didn't even have words. No one had ever taught me leadership, structures, strategies, systems, people development, none of that stuff, right? We were all just the mission, and you work really hard. And so I was telling a mentor, and they handed me a business book. And at first I was like, listen, I'm like a nonprofit people leader. Like, I don't do this math accounting stuff. And they were like, just read the book. And it gave words to leadership. It was actually a John Maxwell leadership book. So one kind of entry level, here's leaders. And I was like, I stayed up till 2 a.m. reading like it was a novel, because I finally had like, yes, I saw that happen just last week. And oh man, he did this today. And so I kind of woke up, man, this leadership stuff matters. So started learning it myself, read books and got a coach, and started going to workshops and conferences and applying all this in my team and seeing this result. And honestly, so I've got a bit of faith in my background as well. And so I was kind of praying about it, and I kind of got mad. I mean, I don't know if this is how most people engage with God, but I kind of like was shaking my fist at him. I was like, it's not right that this mission and these people are held back for bad leaders. They mean well. And man, why isn't somebody doing something to help these leaders? And I kind of felt like God was just elbowing me in the side the whole time, right? Like, yeah, somebody should do something about this.
And that's so interesting, because like you, I was gifted a book back many years ago. Probably, I'm a bit older than you, so the guy is still a dear friend of mine. Matter of fact, we talked this morning.
Nice.
A guy named, and he's in Atlanta. Are you? I think you know Atlanta pretty well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's up in Smyrna. A guy named Diamond Dallas Page. You may not know him.
I know of him. I don't know him personally, but I know his
One
stuff.
of my dearest friends in the world, and he gave me the book Think and Grow Rich, probably 1987 or 88.
Classic. That's a great
Neither one of us knew what we were reading at the time, because we were just dumb, 20-something-year-old kids.
Yep.
We said,
That's
right. Gotta read this. Now, by the way, here's another tidbit you may not know about him. He couldn't read.
Really?
He will tell you in his life, he was dyslexic and couldn't read. But he gave me this book, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And it's like, okay, and I'm a voracious reader. I've always have been.
Yep.
I read it. I was like, oh, this is, like you said, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a war novel. This isn't a spy craft stuff, which is stuff I like.
Yeah, I love that stuff too.
And it was like, oh, this is different. And I was running restaurants at the time. I was like, oh, wow, this is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept going. So imagine what that, and I consider him not only a dear friend, but a part of him, partly a mentor. He's like that big brother you love to hate.
Yeah.
And but yeah, think about you. Now you've had some mentors, and you mentioned a mentor that gave you the book.
Yeah.
What was he like? I mean, he had to be something special for you in your life.
Yeah, so that particular mentor is really a great story, and I'll zoom out for a second, and then I'll go back. If you don't mind, I'll give you a few different mentor stories, because
yeah, sure.
So I've had a handful, maybe 5 or 6 mentors that really changed the course of my life at critical moments. They showed up, they had something for me, they challenged me, or I had a question and they had the answer, and so I've had a variety of different, but man, my life story is incredibly dependent on the impact these have had. And a big part of what I'm doing today is honestly just trying to pass on what they passed to me. Both the insights I learned, but also like the lifestyle of like making myself available and reaching out to folks and helping. I mean, yesterday I was on the phone with a guy who I've been talking to for, man, I guess it was last week. It's a couple of days ago, but I've been mentoring him for 4 years, and he's about to start a business and take off at a whole other level. And it's this huge opportunity. And so when I started talking to him, man, it was just like, I see something, you're like a younger version of me, let's start talking. So I'm trying to pass on, pay it forward kind of thing. So that first mentor, so all that lead up to say, man, that first mentor is not what most people think. That first mentor was my mother. And I don't just mean like, oh, she was a nice mom. She was a great mom. But My mother also happens to be a leadership coach consultant who speaks and trains and runs programs, has her own company. So how I got into this, when I was wrestling through this stuff, up until then, I was like, don't worry, Mom, good luck with your stuff. I'm going to go off and do this cool kind of noble nonprofit-y things and change the world. And I'm trying to tell her, like, what is wrong with these guys? And she's like, I think it might be some leadership stuff. And at first, I'm a punk. I'm like, yeah, whatever, Mom. And she's like, read the book. Like, just here's a book. I think this is what you're talking about. So my mom was also a good mom, but also she's the first leadership coach, consultant, speaker that I ran across and knew personally. And she's the one eventually finished reading this. I was talking to her. She's like, I think maybe this could be something you do. You might, if you're passionate about it, you've got the skill, like the wiring, you could learn the skills, go figure it out. So my mom, and still to this day, my mom and I, yeah. So it's about, when we're recording this, we're about to have a holiday, 4th of July. I'm going to my mom and dad's house. They live 20 minutes from me. And they're both awesome parents and still great, but like, my mom and I have a little bit of rule, like, okay, we can only talk shop so much because the rest of the family is not sharing the same business exactly. My sister is. So my mom, my sister, and I all went down the path, but I'm one of 5 kids, plus lots of cousins and nieces and all that stuff. So big crew will get together and we're like, okay, we can only talk shop so much because, we kind of need to relate to the rest of the room for the other part. So my mom was one of probably my first major mentor. I don't know, I had another one when I was in high school that got me started in a lot of big stuff, but that's it was more personal development than leadership. That's a whole other side of my life. I was a stage guy, grew up on the stage performing. So and my mom got me into leadership. Then honestly, probably the next major mentor was a guy who, while I was doing some of this nonprofit stuff, came alongside me and said, okay, hey, let's start working on your leadership. I'd read these books. I got fired up and he's like, man, so he's a military guy. He was a colonel in the Air Force working on some cool stuff. Cool. And so he came alongside me. And then what got me to Chick-Fil-A, you mentioned Chick-Fil-A was a mentor. A mentor of mine got connected and said, hey, maybe you should talk about Chick-Fil-A. And so I got to confess, I actually delayed answering the email for a month because I kept telling my wife, like, I didn't do all this. So I'd gone and become a consultant and figured this stuff out and got my master's between now and then. And my old friend, like, actually, wait a minute, you should talk. We do this stuff at Chick-fil-A. And I kept thinking, I didn't do all this to go work at a fast food joint, right? I'm like, come on, I want to do fancy stuff. And my wife's like, what's it going to hurt you? Just do the phone call. Like, you can always say no afterwards. And so it's funny. This guy, Mark Miller, was major figure in my life. And I'll tell you, talk about leadership. This guy is, he's written 11 books on leadership, done some phenomenal stuff, traveled the world, worked with some of the biggest and best. John Maxwell is a personal friend of his. We had a epic party for Mark, and John sent a personal note to say, hey man, want to thank you for your impact on my life. But I say all this, like, that's who the guy is.
When John Maxwell says, thank you for the impact you've had on my life. And I know, and John being in Atlanta, and of course, John is one of the foremost leadership experts. And I've got a bookshelf full of his books.
Same, right
Been
over
to
here.
A number of his conferences. When John Maxwell says you made an impact on my life, and as genuine as he is, he must have done something really freaking cool. Sorry.
No, you're not wrong. Mark's that guy, Mark Miller. But Mark spent the last 44 years working as an executive at Chick-fil-A headquarters. He was like the 16th employee that was hired. He's been around forever, and he finally retires. And that's what the party we had was the retirement party. And hundreds of people came and showed up to honor and talk about how he changed their life. And John Maxwell didn't come in person. He said, I'm traveling. I couldn't make the date, but I wanted to send this video. And we played a video message that was specifically John Maxwell saying, Mark Miller, here's what you did, naming some of the stuff, how he impacted him. Okay, so all that for context. Mark Miller's the man, but I had only met him through mutual friends, and they're like, you need to talk to this guy, and Mark's so humble. So I get on the phone, And I'm like, I'm already doubting this thing, Rick. I'm like, okay, I'll be polite. I don't want to, be rude to my Chick-fil-A buddies. And they're like this. So I actually went to high school with the current CEO of Chick-fil-A. It's the Cathy family that owns it. Andrew Cathy, who's running it, is my high school buddy. We played 3 sports together, rode around in trucks in the summer and had a good time. Great guy. But back then I blew him off. I was like, hey, good luck with your little restaurant company. I hope you guys make it.
Chicken wings, or
yeah, you think they're gonna make it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm back. I'd gone and became a consultant, and I was back visiting my buddies in Atlanta, and they're like, "You should talk to our guy Mark Miller. He's the man." And I'm like, "Okay." So I get on the phone, and I'm skeptical. And here's how Mark opens the phone. Classic Mark. He goes, I was like, so, they tell me I need to talk to you about leadership. And here's a bunch of the guys that said I should talk to you. So I want to learn what you guys do on leadership development and strategy. And Mark goes, well, I don't know much about leadership. I just sell chicken. And I was like, oh, this is like, I shouldn't have done it. Right. My wife was wrong. She was wrong this one time. Yeah, she wasn't wrong. Because then Mark starts telling me, well, we do this thing and we have this little model on servant leadership here, and here's a strategy program. And he's a good old boy from Georgia. I mean, he's got the accent and but the wisdom that just started coming out of his mouth, I started taking notes. At the end of that hour, I was like, so tell me more about that open position you guys have. Mentors, man. And I wrote my first book because of Mark, because he was writing books, and he's like, I think you got a book. So he started helping me with the book writing process. I launched my first blog because Mark was like, I mean, listen, if you're going to be an influencer, you got to get out there somehow. Blogs, newsletters, podcasts, there's got to be some content you produce for the world. And it's good. So
all the time.
So it was just like piece after piece. If you look at the stuff I'm doing now and the scale I'm doing it at, it's because 10, 15 years ago.
And that's so critical for some of our listeners to know is, and I wrote in my book, Roll Up Your Sleeves and Get to Work, one of them was get a coach, or get a mentor. And by the way, and this is one of the interesting things that people don't think about. They're not looking to mentor you, but you have to know you need a mentor. You have to go to them. Yeah. It's not like somebody magically appears and goes, hi, Scott, I'd like to be your mentor. Could I mentor you? Because I think I see great things in you. Now, there can be some of that occasionally.
That's incredibly rare, though.
But rare. You've got to go seek it out. And that's what I've done. And you've done is we seek that out.
That's right.
And that's really what's been transformational in a lot of careers, yours, mine, a lot of other folks, is find that mentor, folks, is go out and find somebody who's doing what you might want to do, that has that expertise that you want to have, and say, hey, I'm willing to be a sponge, pliable, and I'm willing to learn, and I'll do the work. And sometimes it's dirty work. Yeah. But it is what it is.
I mean, part of how my mentoring relationship with Mark works. So even though I left, I keep in touch with Mark as a mentor. We talk 3-4 times a year. And so just like continue the pouring into, but man, how did that start? Because he's a boss to a lot of people, and a lot of them didn't stay there. One, I reach out to him every year and say, hey, can we put a couple of dates on the calendar where I can call you and we talk more stuff? And so he's wide open. He's gracious. He's kind. He does it. But yes, I'm the one that reaches out. And then when I was working for him, we would host all these events, leadership training programs, do this stuff, or design them, plan them, speak at them. Mark, as a servant, would always stay off after and help tear the place down. Even though he's the big executive, he's like cleaning tables and picking up trash. And
great. That's a servant leader's heart right there.
Well, I decided I'm going to stay. Now, I'll be honest. At first, I just wanted to like hang out more with Mark and see if I could get into some conversations with him, right? There's a bunch of us in the team that reported to him. And I was like, how do I get more time? Eventually, I learned the power of service for its own sake. But yeah, man, I just like, hey, if I got to pick up trash to get an extra conversation in with him, let me do it. If I got to be the one to chase him down, I'll do it because
and that's what it takes, is doing the things that, watching those leaders and then emulate it. And this true servant leader is, as we both know, is one that gives back and does without asking or looking in return. They just do, and they give, and they're available, they're open. But if you don't ask, they won't come.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. So talk
And
about,
I'm
let's
going
be
to
a
say a
little
couple things
shifty.
on this because I have
Okay.
asked, and there was twice where there was a phenomenal person I wanted to be mentored by, and they said no. And they were kind and gracious. They said, look, I just, with my life as it is, I have no margin. In fact, I'm trying to cut some things out. Like I am massively overloaded. And I think you're awesome, but I just can't do that, Scott. So I can't guarantee that if the listeners, you ask everybody, they have to reply. But I kept asking, and then the guy like Mark Miller says, "Sure, I'll do this part for you at least," and then this part, and then it grew into like a multi-year major deal. But yeah, ask. Sometimes people might say no, but sometimes they might say yes. And if they say no, you're back where you left off. Like you're not worse, right? You haven't lost anything. You've
You didn't
just
lose anything. And it's that old saying is when the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
yes,
And
yes.
that's absolutely true. God has a plan for our lives. And
Mhm.
as we're both men of faith,
Yeah.
so we know that God is leading us all the way. And those no's, as what does Garth Brooks say? Sometimes unanswered prayers are the best
Yes.
ones. Yeah, that might
Yes.
not have been the mentor you needed at the time.
That's exactly right.
And that's truly what it is. It's, God knows. And when you got those no's, that no was simply just another way to get a yes someplace else.
That's right.
So keep
That's right.
that in mind. So folks, if you're listening, and like Scott said, find your mentor, go and ask. If someone says no, say thank you, be gracious, ask somebody else. Never,
Mhm.
ever, ever stop asking.
Yeah.
And, without those mentors, we aren't who we are today. So, and it also plays into a little something about those mentors help develop the way that we think
Mm.
and the process that we have and mindset.
Mm.
Something that I've been working on really hard lately is the right mindset,
Mm.
either understanding it better, how it drives us as individuals, but also for myself sometimes.
Yeah.
Because as small business owners, both of us are small business owners. We've got our
Yep.
consulting practices, we have our coaching practices.
Mhm.
It gets lonely, and sometimes it gets a little depressing, or like
Yeah,
it's
they're hard
real
days.
life.
Yeah.
And you have a hard day, there's, like, holy smokes, it's me. When at the bottom, at the end of the day, you're at the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
So how does mindset play, in your opinion, into any task? And what can leaders today do to keep that right mindset?
Yeah. Man, you're right. This is the game. The game is won or lost in the mindset, and then it manifests in the world around you. But yeah, if you're just trying to wrestle the external stuff and you never deal with the internal, man, you're playing not one hand tied behind your back. You're playing with like your feet tied together. Like you can't move around with the mindset locked in. So huge. I love the insight. The insight behind the question's big. All right. So mindset, man, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I'd say two big ones come to mind that for me have been big shifts I had to make as I stepped my leadership up. One is remembering why. It is really easy to get focused on the tasks and the goals and the numbers and how many social media and what are sales like and what's the latest feedback from the event and like I got calls and ding 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 and you've got all these immediate right in your face to-dos that you feel like you're grinding and working and some the hard days are a lot of times when like I've done all the things I think are the right thing to do and I got no and it failed and they cancel and you're like what do I got to do? And it's really important for me to pull back and talk about why, to remind myself why, to have my team I'll journal on it. I will pray about it. I will talk to my team about it. I even occasionally will read a book to remind me of it, but like why care? And if it's just to make a buck, that's not going to get me through the tough times. Yes, I want to measure the money and I want to measure client satisfaction. And we literally this morning, my team and I were going through the half year review and saying, okay, how many people did we impact? We have a little scorecard we're keeping up, right? But
Sure.
Man, those are not the point. The point is like, I'm not saying this just because we happen to talk about it. The point is like, man, I've been changed so much. I feel like it's my honor, it's my joy, it's my obligation, like all tangled together. It's like a heavy thing and a beautiful thing to say, man, I need to impact lives the way I was impacted. And I want to measure it just so I know, hey, am I getting better at what I'm doing, right? Hopefully the numbers go up
Are
every
you on
year.
track? It's like anything
But
else.
but it's not about the numbers, it's about the impacts for me. It's about the relationships. So why is a big deal, and I think it's easy to forget the why, or to not have a very vivid why. I'm like, make the world better. Well, that's really vague. Like, who are you trying to help with what kind of problem, and why does that motivate you? And I go back to remembering what it felt like when I was a young leader, and I had the hope and the dream, and everyone around me had good intentions, and we did not know how to pull the thing off, and the frustration and even the like agony and despair of like, why I can't even figure out why this isn't working. I just know it's not working. And I take myself back to that place, and I say, I'm trying to help that guy, I'm trying to help that girl, those leaders who are in that place. That's what I'm here for. So why, man? How do you get through the hard times? Why? This is where faith comes in, even, but it's a part of the story. Like, what's the big story, right?
Yeah, the whole concept of mindset, I think, is so critical, because we have the choice of mindset we take, that we keep, that we have in our mind. And I do a lot of work personally in our military community, and I'm so blessed to be able to work with these men and women who have served our country. And as we celebrate our freedom, 247 years of freedom,
yes, sir.
As we're recording this, it's always good. And I talk to them. I say, well, what is it about that elite of the elite? When we talk to those tier 1 operators, the SEALs, the Green Berets, the Dev Group guy, all those guys, they said what got me through was mindset, was having the right thought process. All I have to do is make it to the next thing, or whatever it happened to be at the time. I've got to push through to that difficult time, that typical time frame when I'm not sure where I'm going. I don't know sure if I can make it, because I'm almost at the gas tank is almost empty.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
But my mindset is the one that pushes you to that next level.
Yes. It's funny you mentioned that. So a couple of my good buddies have been Navy SEALs. In fact, one of them was in the Dev Group, which is like the SEALs of the SEALs. And so
Yep.
We talked a lot. I've been to the SEAL headquarters training and their training center and all that. I mean, it's a world that's fascinating to me too. And it's funny, one of the things they said is, okay, you know who doesn't usually make it through their intensive training program is usually the 6'4", 250-pound ripped dude. And they're like, why doesn't he usually make it? Because they don't really care what your standard is. They'll just keep pushing the bar further and further. The goal is, well, we're just going to make you do, like, Newt, I can do more push-ups than everyone else. Great. We'll just keep making you do them until you can't. Like, everybody has their limit. Yours might be 50 past mine, but that's great. Then you do 50 extra. And so they say what breaks down is everybody gets to the point where they're out of gas, and the ones who make it is not correlated to size at all. They say the ones who make it are the ones who say, I can't let my brother down who's next to me in this foxhole or in the middle of the water or on the beach. I can't let that guy down. I'll keep going for his sake. And those guys get through. Whereas the guys who are like, it's all about me, at some point they say, well, screw this. This isn't fun for me. I'm out.
It's not fun no more. I'm done. Yeah. And that's truly it. And as you know, I'm a 6'4", 240-pound guy. So you kind of scared me a little bit.
Yeah. It's not to say you can't make it.
Most of the team guys I know are not that big.
No.
But they are the greatest heart, greatest servants, and just amazing individuals for what they've done. Now, there's a couple of big guys that are on the team.
Not to say the big guys.
There's always, but it's still mindset.
That's it. It's the big guy has to have the mindset. Being big isn't the advantage. It's the mindset that's the advantage.
That's absolutely it. So leaders, as you think about this, what is your mindset as you're going through your day? You have a crappy day. We're going to have them. They're going to come up. How are you going to push through? How are you going to look to help your team? That's the thing.
And let me drop one more mindset thing that's been good, especially on the hard days, is I say to myself, I'm not going to waste a drop of this pain. Because like pain happens and it's intense and hard. Like, well, what do you mean by waste it? Well, there have been times in my life where I've done dumb stuff or just didn't have a skill or whatever the case may be. And I got in trouble and things hurt. But I didn't learn anything. So guess what? A while later, I'd be in a similar situation and I'd make the same mistakes and the pain would happen again. And it was like, you know what? I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn from this difficult moment and then never let myself go through a hard thing without deciding to change at least one small thing. Like I'm going to change something because I am not going to go through this pain and not learn from it. Like, dang it, I better upgrade. And so what that means is like, okay, this pain might suck, but I'm going to benefit from it. It's going to push something to my life to the next level so that next time around, I'm going to make less mistakes. And so it helps me kind of redeem some of the meaninglessness of the pain. It's like, even when the pain, somebody else does something dumb, I'm like, all right, how do I learn from that? Maybe so that I won't be in there. So whatever it is, I say to myself, all right, this might hurt badly, but I'm not going to waste a drop of this pain. I'm going to learn and do less of this pain next time around. And
that's the answer to the question, what can leaders do today to keep the right mindset? Is what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
What can I learn from this to make me a better human being?
100%.
Because better humans make better humans.
Yes. Yes. In fact, one of the things I'll say in my newsletter and stuff is like, hey, if you learn how to learn, you'll figure all the rest of the stuff out, right? If you can have that learner growth mindset, well, man, everything else then
constantly learning all the time. That's awesome. So, okay, I know we got a time crunch here, so I want to be kind of respectful of your time.
Sure.
Just a little bit. Because I love this. We could do this for days.
I was going to say, man, if we don't put a limit on it, we'll be here. Yeah.
You mentioned the book. You had your first book. And I know you've written 2 others, but I hear you have another one coming out. What's the title of the latest one that's coming out? Tell us a little bit about that.
So this fall is coming out the book, Make Your Brand Legendary. So we literally just figured the title out like 3 days ago. Been back and forth with a bunch of different options, but coming out this fall, super excited. I've been working on the book for probably 5 years. It's the stuff my consulting company's been doing that just been getting these huge returns, value and impact and excitement. And like, man, look, company's transformed. Like, okay. So after doing it for enough years, started writing it. It took me 5 years to write it just because I did it in my spare time. And some months there's no spare time, but eventually finally got the thing done. And yeah, here we are, man. So Make Your Brand Legendary. It's how to create an amazing customer experience, like the 5 systems that you put them all together, one of which is leadership. In fact, we talk about a healthy leadership team as the belt that runs around all these gears because it's behind the scenes, right? The customers don't see it up front, but if you don't have a healthy team that's all pointed in the same direction, aiming for the same win, then you end up with maybe a schizophrenic or a broken customer experience where like it feels this way here and that way there, and I don't know what's going on. I'm not sure what's real. And so anyway, so all that to say, yeah, the customer experience engine is this diagram at the heart of the book. And it's if you follow the engine, you can make your brand legendary. Dude, it's what I've learned working with legendary brands. It's how they do it. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's just a set of systems. And when you put them together, it feels amazing.
And that's what it is. It's a matter of build a system and put it to work every single day. And that's what business is all about. So, okay. So what's next for you? What's coming up other than the book? What else is coming up for Scott?
Man, lots of fun stuff. So the book, we're launching an online program. I just started my own podcast as part of how we got into this conversation is, hey, awesome. Podcasts, I need to figure this world out. So creating a bunch of fun stuff that honestly, I've done a terrible job in the past. The book kind of forced me to follow my own advice. I've basically built my company on word of mouth. Been going for many years, and thank God the buzz is cool enough that every year we grow by people just recommending us. And most of our clients are return clients. They keep coming back and then they tell their buddy and we add another one. But I really have done almost none of the actual proper marketing stuff that you should do, which is not the whole book, but there's a part of it. Like, how do you kind of build that attention getting and like, I should probably follow my own advice. Dang it. So about a year and a half ago, started building out some of that stuff. So that's been consuming a ton of the extra time on top of the normal work, coaching, consulting, training, right? There's like, well, we should start a website and I should get a blog. And what about this podcast? And so that's been an online program, an online training if I can't show up in person. So the whole wing of like the digital world, that's been a big learning zone for me. And so that's a big part of what's happening. The other part, honestly, is my team. We've just grown and grown to the point where, used to be I did all the projects, and then my team came along with me, and then we crossed that threshold. We're like, man, I can't do it all. Like, we have to be able to, my team has to be able to kill it without me there. So I have rock star individuals, but there was still a bunch of the company that was like, hey, this is all stuck in Scott's head. And so for the last couple of years, the method, like, get it out of Scott's head and get it into some sort of system that we can execute when he's not around. And I'm putting that to the test, man, because I'm about to take 3 weeks off, and I've got an epic family trip I'm doing. We're going to Israel. That's Thursday. We're leaving 2 days after this. I'm done. And then I'm taking a couple of weeks of sabbatical and like just pull back for 3 weeks, and partly to catch my breath, remember why, enjoy my family this summer, but also partly to like give the team a chance. Like, hey, you could talk all day long about running without Scott, but hey, you got 3 weeks. Don't call me unless the place is burning down. Don't call me. Figure it out. I'll see you guys in 3 weeks. And so
Burning some of that down, call the fire department. Don't call you. You're in Israel.
That's exactly right. I won't even be around. Like, just let me know what the insurance says. So
good stuff,
a lot of growth, man. A lot of growth.
I love it. I love hearing it. He's a good man. So I always close out our podcast with 3 quick questions for you. Okay. Number one. And so you're holding a dinner party and you get to invite 5 people. There's 6, dinner party for 6. You get to invite 5 people. Who do you invite and why? Now, they could be alive or dead, history, all of history.
Man,
who do you invite?
There's some tons of fascinating people I would love to invite. Okay, let me go off the top of my head. I'll pick some folks from history. Teddy Roosevelt, fascinated by Teddy. He's the man, and a character. He would make for an exciting dinner partner. Teddy Roosevelt, man, talking about fascinating people who I'd love to ask questions of. Teddy Roosevelt and Alexander the Great. Those are a couple of folks from history. Crazy stuff. And there's lots of theories about both of them, and love to hear what they actually think. Maybe more modern folks that I'd be fascinated to spend time with. Goodness. So Elon Musk. Again, I'm thinking about people who would make for an interesting party, and I got questions for them. Elon Musk, throw him in that mix. That'd be exciting and interesting. And then Jim Collins, one of the wisest people I've had the chance to work with. I've done a bit with him at Chick-Fil-A. And man, he's not just a good writer, like profound. Every other sentence is like mind blown. Yeah. And then I think I got one more to spend, right? So who else would I throw in that list? Oh man, I'd invite Moses. Talk about a guy who lived some crazy stories.
Sure.
Yeah, Moses would be a fascinating guy.
Good.
So there you go.
That'd be a great dinner party. Be a lot of interesting conversation, that's for sure.
Heck
so,
yeah.
Okay, second question. An article's being written about you after you're gone. Well, not what's in it. What's the title?
Ooh. Something like a better man than he was a leader, and he was a good leader. Like, that's really kind of like at the end of it all. Yeah, I want to do some cool accomplishments, but I want my kids, and Lord willing, grandkids, don't have any yet, but someday, I want my kids and my family and my best friends and my wife to be able to say, yeah, you guys know the big fancy public stuff, but he was a better human than even all of that. It's what we said about Mark Miller at his retirement party. We said, absolutely, you changed our life, but the best parts were you as a human and how you impacted us as a person. So that's my passion. Cool. That's my dream.
So now, third question, what do you do for success every morning to set yourself up for a good day?
Yeah, critical. I have a pretty thought out morning routine. So first thing I do is I get up. Well, okay, during the school year, I still have a couple of kids at home at school. So I'll get up and make sure that I spend a little bit of time with them, talking to them. I say something as they head out the door every day. I kind of show up, make sure they have all their details, give them all a hug and kiss. And then I say this, it's like a mantra. I say to them every time. I say, hey, they're walking out to the car, and I shout out the door, work hard, choose joy, make wise choices. In fact, one of my kids had it made into a bracelet when she was going off to college. So it's kind of a saying. So my kids try to be there just a little, just show up, right? Then I go do some think time. I read the Bible as a man of faith. It just kind of gets me back to thing. I do check social media at that time, but not in the way most people do. I'm kind of more professional where I pop on and I create content. So before the day starts, I write something. I drop a quote, a thought, pull pictures up and tell a story about it. But I'm creating content every morning. So then I go exercise. And typically what that looks like for me is I run. I'll do some, I have a small gym here at home and I'll do it like 10 minutes tops. I don't do a lot of lifting. I probably ought to do a little more. And then I put on earbuds and I go run a lap around the neighborhood while I listen to an audiobook. So I'm working my body and working my brain. And then I come back, and honestly, it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And now I'm finally ready to do the rest of the day. But man, that opening of the day is the key. Like, you get all the critical things done. I learn, I work on my spirit, I create content, I pour into my kids, I work my body. Like, the rest of the day is bonus, man. I've already made progress right away.
Man, great advice. So folks, if you're listening, that's some amazing advice right there. Make sure you start your day the right way. Yeah. Mind, body, and spirit. Amen. That's really powerful. Scott, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know you're a busy guy. Rick, and so much knowledge. I know there's 10 times more wisdom in that we could even get into a program. But if you want our audience to know one thing, what would you leave them with?
Man, greatness is possible. It's not luck. It's not random. Yes, you can have a luckier start than others, but really greatness is putting the right systems together. What do you want to be great at? There's a set of systems that does that. Put those in place and make it happen.
That's great. Thank you, Scott. Folks, I'm Coach Rick, and that's The Bald Truth.
You've been listening to The Bald Truth with Coach Rick of the Peak Performance Group, the company that helps people and organizations reach their potential. If you're looking for a way to grow your organization, whether it's sales or strategic direction, the Peak Performance Group coaches can help you grow with their proven business acceleration process. Call them at 817-748-7425 or go to mypotentialplus.com and they'll connect you with the right coach for you. And remember to subscribe and like below. The Bold Truth Leadership Podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, and YouTube video. Hit like and subscribe to get every episode. Thanks for listening to the Bald Truth Leadership Podcast. And until next time, roll up your sleeves and get to work, and you can make things happen.
I'm Coach Rick, and that's The Bald Truth.